Thank you for coming to creating a psychedelic integration journal. My name is Elizabeth J.O., and I am part of Altered States Integration, where we take education and harm reduction and make it accessible to people everywhere through the internet. So before we get started, I just want to invite you into one of our rituals here at Altered States Integration, which is a mindfulness moment. If it feels comfortable, you're welcome to turn off your camera and close your eyes. Maybe start to turn inward as a moment, just taking this break between where you came from and where we're going. And I want you to go ahead and let your attention just maybe wander to a place in your body where things are calling you the most. Maybe that's your breath. Maybe that's an uncomfortable place in your body, or maybe it's a place of joy. I want you just to notice and observe for just a moment. And then I want you to bring your attention to your breath if you haven't already. Observing your inhale, your exhale, this steady, stable breath that's with us every day of our life. And if your mind wanders from your breath, just gently notice and bring it back to your breath. You may have to repeat this a few times. And then I'm going to invite us to one community breath together so that we can come into sync here, even on an electronic call, to the community intention of growth. So I want to invite you to exhale, then inhale for a cleansing breath, sipping air in at the tippy top, and exhaling maybe through your mouth, releasing it, releasing the exercise, maybe gently moving your fingers, toes. And as you open your eyes back to your room, maybe looking at something far away and then looking at something close up, just remembering your surroundings. Then when you're ready, coming back into this space. Welcome back, everyone. So just a little class overview so you know where we're going. You can place your questions in the chat box, and we'll maybe look at more of those later. We're going to look at some of the benefits of journaling, and we're going to look at what psychedelic journaling is specifically. And then I'm going to show you a bunch of journal entries that have meant something to me. Now, none of this is necessarily inclusive. This is just suggestive, something to maybe get your own creative juices going. And then I'm going to give you some tips for getting started, some things that I found out along the way. Um, it's really interesting to think about that my first real journaling success was after using psychedelics. And as I moved through, I got less and less strict. And now I'm here almost 8 years later, and I'm still keeping a journal on a regular basis compared to the other 10 years of my life. So hopefully this will bring some opening to you as well. So, some benefits of journaling. Yeah, what we don't process persists, right? So, if we're not dealing with it, it's going to kind of have this nagging part to us. And one of the really important values is that things that are nagging and rumination and things like that is that they tend to go really fast. And if you've ever tried to really write down what was coming into your mind, you'll notice that your mind is like on to the next subject before you've written a word. And so part of journaling from a written context is that it slows down our thought processes. And that can be really important for seeing what is actually happening for you. And it can also give us a sense of ease within a stressful situation. Um, I think that there's this piece of accountability that also happens because once we've written it down and it's in our own handwriting, especially, I mean, we can type too, or talk to text, but when we have written it down, we now have to own that statement, whatever that is, to some degree, because, it's no longer in our head, it's no longer a thought, it actually has some physicality. Um, and then I think that there's something that this is a quote that we can't manage what you don't measure. This is kind of from the neurohacking community that when we are keeping track, it gives us a sense of honesty, but in both a way of not just saying, oh, I'm lying to myself in a bad way. It might be we're trying to maybe undercut what we're doing. Maybe we're not seeing the growth curve because we don't have the data there. And so the neurohacking community has really been influential for me in putting data on paper, like actually looking at things as data. Um, I think there's this idea that we have different parts. Some of you might be familiar with parts work. And I think that one of the values of journaling is that it helps to separate some of those parts from the sense of self, from this IFS, internal family systems model, that it helps us to come away with an idea not being us, and that by putting it into a journal, we can actually help that process. Journaling also helps to create more neural connections, which is, I don't know, neuroplasticity. That's why I'm here. Um, and this can also enhance our work with our coaches and therapists because it gives something concrete to come back to. It can be a placeholder. It can be something to reflect on. And it can also be a reflection of that work that we're doing with those people. Um, and I like to think of this as kind of a message in a bottle. So this idea that when I feel stress, that I take this journal and it's a piece of paper that I stuff into a little bottle and I throw it out into the ocean. And then future me gets to pick it up and look at it and be like, oh, was that what was going on for her? And I think that that is really powerful. So a lot of messages to my future self in different states. Um, Here is a quote from Dr. James Penn Baker, and I do recommend his work, The Secret Life of Pronouns, What Our Words Say About Us. And he says, while the effects are often modest, the mere act of translating emotional upheaval into words is consistently associated with improvements in physical and mental health. And so this is something that's already been proven. Like there are already people who are looking into this. And this is just journal. This is just trauma journaling. This doesn't even have to do with psychedelics. And I think that we'll see the same thing cross over in the future. So what is a psychedelic integration journal? I think this is just a place to put your ideas and emotions and experiences surrounding a psychedelic experience, and maybe some of the growth work that you're trying to do um, into one specific spot. And again, there's many ways to do this, so this is just the methodology that I have come up with. Here's some goals that you could consider for your integration journal. That it's just to get these ideas out of your head. Once they're out of your head, sometimes that can be relieving for people in and of itself because they don't have to remember. Um, it helps us to recognize the ideas that we're having. It brings it really into focus, beliefs, patterns, maybe, because over time you may find that journaling that you see the same thing multiple times, and it becomes a little bit more transparent that way. I think this is really cool from a neurohacking perspective, this tracking of changes and patterns, and just being able to have the data and to be able to see whether it's an upswing or maybe just a cycle. Being stuck in a cycle can feel really disempowering. But once we see the cycle, we have so many options to manipulate that cycle, even if it's something that's going to continue to happen to us. Um, and then there's this last part about sharing. One of the most important parts to me of doing integration work in support groups, which is one of the main things that I do in the integration space, is the fact that it allows us to be witnessed. And when we are making a psychedelic integration journal, we have the opportunity to be witnessed by our most inner self. And we also have the opportunity to be witnessed by others because we can share that. Um, and then maybe it's sharing it with our group and maybe it's sharing it with a therapist. But this sharing part of connection is really important to healing work. So some rules in air quotes for sure. A little sarcastic here. Use your journal as often as you can. And if you could use it daily, especially when you're integrating, like right before a trip, maybe into a experience or right before you leave for an ayahuasca, that can be really powerful to witness what your experience was before and your expectations and your worries, and then what was happening afterwards. It could be daily. And don't get hung up on how often you're doing it. If you feel compelled to be in that place, be in that place. So I think the second rule is the most important. There are no rules. Do what works. Try new things. So this idea of a message in a bottle. So this I've taken a little bit farther. This is just doing the work. So if you have some paper and you want to participate with our journaling class today, we're going to take just a moment here. And I want you to maybe flip over the paper or maybe at the bottom of where you think you're going to take some notes. And I want you to write a quick positive message to yourself just about 60 minutes into the future. What does this message to your future self need to hear from you, from your present self? Consider including future gratitude. Now, this is a technique that I use in all my journals, and there's not a one that I get to the back of and don't have some sort of little surprise about what I wrote for myself and how very on point it is for that moment that I need to see that. Starting a journal for me is very hopeful. I love having how the new pages feel and how it smells. And so a lot of those messages that I have for myself are really trying to inspire wherever I am in the work, wherever I am in my life to push me forward. So this is just a practice that you can do for yourself. I think another version of this would be to write yourself a letter and stick it in the bottom of your drawer, like a sock drawer, or maybe mail yourself something for next week if you're in a particularly hard time of your life. You can send yourself a letter to receive a few days later. I think it can be really inspiring to hear from ourselves, so intentionally. Once we get those muddy, maddening, confusing thoughts on the page, we face our day with clearer eyes. So I've broken up our journal entries into these basic categories. Now, they again can be anything. I think of these things as a journal as being kind of a hodgepodge. So, trying to separate out a journal from being a dialogue or being only about trip reports. I think that I was trying to have too many notebooks of things. And what really worked was kind of just starting to stuff everything into the same book without worrying about is it chronological? Does this make necessarily sense? You can always put a date on a page. You can flip around. You'll understand it later. And so I like to put things in, this is a little bit of a scrapbook style. So I put in flyers. I might put in business contacts. If we met in person and you gave me your business card, I might just tape it on in there and write a little note and be like, met them at Psychedelic Science. And then that way it's contextually in a chronological order in general. And I like having that. It really does prompt me to understand where things were happening in my life. And then I might put in memories like a little travel log or diary or Dear Diary, I feel very explosive today. I can't believe that I feel so out of sorts. What is going on. Man, and there's an itch over here, like under my rib. I'm gonna have to find out if I have strep of the rib. And then like later on, I go back and I read those things and I'm like, well, that was totally weird. But it does bring a smile to my face. And it does also give me an opportunity if I were having a symptom of whatever, that would also come up repeatedly and I would be able to track that. I think there's artist expressions, so drawings, poems, stories. You want to start a story, just start writing it. Who knows if you'll take up the rest of the journal or if it'll just be half a page. There's this other opportunity. Processing things, emotional journal, revisiting themes, impressions. When I do integration circles, I actually use my same journal and I just write the date and the integration circle that I'm doing, the organization I'm doing it for. And when I just do kind of scribbly notes to keep my attention and I'm like trying to use journaling as a way of attention, I just write it down there and it is still there. Those messages are still there later on. So it can be neat to have those themes and impressions of the moment. Lessons and skills, aha moments, insights, class notes. So like when I do a webinar, I write it just in the same place. You go and you're doing this class perhaps, and this is just one more entry on top of all of the things that you want to keep track of. Habit tracking, we're going to look at this really close. Neurohacking, journaling, and measuring progress can be very data driven. And this is a really great place to keep that data. And then I like to put inspiration. So as you'll see throughout this presentation, I use a lot of quotes because they do mean something to me. And reading back through them does incite a certain type of feeling or a memory or jog some inspiration for me. And so I'll put in stickers, I'll put in powerful questions. Whatever is meaningful, I think, is the overall point. What is the meaning of this moment that might be important here? And then, of course, we might want to use this for our trip stories. So maybe this is where you put in your little entries for microdosing, maybe if you're doing integration exercises, and then your trip reports. Like, are you going to put down your story that you experienced afterwards? Are you going to write about how you went on a journey through the woods while you were walking and found a stream and there was this lesson that happened? And so this is of course, the quintessential idea of a psychedelic integration journal. But I want you to see that there's all these other options to make the integration journal integrated. So let's look at some of these topics. So integrating memories. So this is just some examples out of my journal. Um, what is important about today? You can see that some of my entries are not very long. This looks like oh, we're entering COVID times. And so we can see that there was some really short entries that I had. I was working on doing something a little bit more concise for a while. Maybe it was like a challenge that I was doing to journal every day. And rather than try and write an entire log, I just wrote what felt good at that moment. You can also see that like I started putting art just in line and not worrying about it. And I think that when I was doing this, we're at Valentine's Day, clearly. Um, like day before Valentine's Day, I'm probably feeling pretty sorry for myself at this point. And it says I missed yoga because my alarm didn't snooze. And then we come over here to some art that I was invited to make around Valentine's Day. And while everyone else was making really pretty Valentines, mine became something that was deconstructed. And now it's kind of a nice piece of art. Here's one for integrating memories. As you can see, there is a card in here. Here is a parking entrance fee that I probably wanted to make sure that I didn't lose so that I could submit it for something. And then we have a drawing that I ended up putting on some sort of a poem. And you can see that I didn't even do it perfectly over here. I ended up crossing something out here. It's not how many moons rise you see, it's how many moments you see this one. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I wrote that. Cool. See, that's the idea. Integrating memories. Here we have some of my travel journal for when I was in Thailand. And instead of having a separate scrapbook, because I always wanted to scrapbook or having it even look nice, I'm just using some like random stickers. I buy sheets of like little stickers that can work to stick things into. And I'm just sticking, receipts over my journal entries. Ready to do a little more practice? So here's an invitation for easy journal travel logs. Write the date of your top of your entry, and write a short phrase that describes the three most significant things that happened to you recently. If you want to play along at home, maybe it's the three most significant things that happened today. Maybe it's one word, maybe it's two words. After you've written down those three words or ideas, next to each memory, draw a smiley face or a sad face or whatever kind of stick figure face you want to draw that indicates an emotional charge. Add as many faces as you need to. Maybe you need a couple of those happy faces for what happened today. You've just emotionally journaled about your day. Congratulations. And then there's art. This is integration without words. These are just doodles. This is me hanging out at, Sunburn 2017. Oh my gosh, that's a burn. I'm at a burn and I'm just doing a little self-journaling for the day to maybe just be present, right? Maybe just to hang out by myself for a little bit. And then you come back and you're like, I don't know. It looks like I was doing good. Maybe I was the dragging over dragon over here. I don't know. Um, And then I think there's something about art not having to be our own. So I want to give this as an invitation that if you don't feel inclined to doodles or art, that we can also put art in here that is someone else's. So this is actually a mandala that I cut out and I just pasted it in. Glue sticks are amazing. I really highly recommend them. They're really fun for receipts. They're really easy for business cards. You get a business card, you just slap that glue stick on it, you throw it in that journal, and you move on. So I do love the glue stick. Um, and then we might be using poems and stories and creative inspiration. This is a shot of part of my journey, and I don't know that I drew this picture at one time. Like this is kind of an overview of my iboga experience. And literally, I probably have 50 pages written about my trip report, about like what the experience was when I did iboga. And this little picture here was something that I filled in every time I did a journal entry. I would just do one more part. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you know the story and that it starts here and that there was a big scary death scene as I was on my come up. And of course, there was the God moment. And then we go through the rest of the story here. And really, this is for me, right? And it helped me as I was going back through it also to maybe process things before I could write about them. If you're interested about this journal entry more, I do have my full trip report written out in this book, Breaking Emotional Addiction. And it is about my 50% of the book is literally just the trip report. Okay, more work. So let's do a 1 minute art check-in. Maybe you close your eyes, stop, take a few deep breaths, let go of whatever thought came up when you said, oh, art. And then I want you to just scan your body for inner sensations, checking your emotional weather. What is your emotional sensations showing up in your body? physical sensations. And then with your pen, maybe on a specified part of your paper, I want you to just start to draw some shapes that represent your current states. Is your shape pointed? Is your shape contained? Is your shape colored in? Do you need darker or lighter colors? Does your shape have faces or teeth? Few more moments and then we're going to go on, but I want you to feel like you can finish up your last few things. Habit tracking. This is the cornerstone of neurohacking. I am first and foremost a neurohacker. Somewhere along the way, I became a psychonaut. And habit tracking is something that is very powerful. Here you have two different versions of habit tracking. And one of them is from like journaling. So if you're not familiar with bullet journaling, I do recommend that you look into it. So that's the first thing maybe to notice is that this journal has a lot of little dots in it. This I really enjoy because I want things to be kind of neat, but I'm also not a technical drawer, so I need some help. And it allows you to make all kinds of different charts and graphs and um, different things where the lines help. This first one here we can look at my drinking habits at this time. As you can see, it was not insignificant for this month, as I was tracking how many beverages I had on any one day, starting with the first of the month or the first of where I was doing it. I was also tracking the pots and the meats because I do like to be towards a more sustainable lifestyle. I do eat meat, and I also choose to make sure I'm not overeating, right? So this can be a lot of different things that relate to your health that you think are important. And so you can just do how many. You can just have it like this. The entry behind it, this is something that is much more advanced. And I do not recommend until you feel much more inclined to journaling because it can become very overwhelming very quick. As you can see, I have up to maybe 18 things that I'm tracking on how much I'm doing and what I'm doing. But this is an option for you. This is what bullet journaling was meant to do. And as you can see, I keep it pretty simple. I'm not putting in a lot of information. It's trying to go in maybe most days and being like, check, check, check. And also, hey, look, I didn't track this last part, but then when I got to the 31st, I said, yep, I should track this. And so I started tracking it again. I think goal setting is another habit of high achieving people. And this particular habit that I'm showing you here is something that can be done at the beginning of the month, where you just allow yourself to create some simple goals for that month. I don't recommend having a ton of goals. Again, we want to keep this simple. You can always add more later. This is in Spanish, you can see, because I'm also trying to use this as an opportunity for me to learn more Spanish. So metas is goals. ¿Qué es difícil? I'm asking what's hard? What's the barriers here? And what are the things that I'm really working on? So at this time, I was working on meditation 5 times a week and exercise 5 times a week. That's it. That was enough, right? I think the thing about goal setting too is to make sure that our goals are specific. If you don't know what SMART goals are, it is a very good way of keeping goals concise and doable. And then we have emotion um, checking in on ourselves. And there's a lot of different types of behavior tracking sheets, but you can have sheets that go for the week that you can add in. You can create your own in your journal, but this can be really important for recognizing, is the microdosing that I'm doing making my symptoms less? Because when we are in a heightened state of emotion, especially when it's negative, it's hard for you to be clear and analytical about that state. It may feel like the worst day of your life. And frankly, because you are experiencing it in the now, it might be the worst day of your life. And once you are over that day, you want to be able to look back and say, hey, I've only had two of those worst days of my life this week. And normally it's five. Or maybe I've only had one of these worst days or kind of worst days in this month. And normally I have six. And so behavior tracking is a very important part of a lot of therapy, and I think DIY therapy, which is part of what this is. It's a very important cornerstone. Dialectical behavioral therapy has some good behavior tracking methodology if you need to look into this deeper. And so um, I think that one of the things I do like to do is have a calendar. Again, here's where we have our metas, our goals, and then here's the calendar. And I definitely like to keep up with the calendar. Another way of doing journaling would be to have a calendar written into your journal like this, and maybe you just put a happy face or a sad face. Maybe all you're tracking is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? Especially if you're not good at tracking how you feel in your body. If these exercises that we're doing where we're scanning our body feel difficult because you're not able to access that, maybe you can access the question of, is this yes? Is this no? Is this I'm not sure? All right, back to doing the work. So pick one positive habit that you are trying to change and one ineffective habit you are trying to decrease to track this week. So this would be like positive things are, I'm trying to do more vegetables. A negative thing might be, I'm trying to say, I'm sorry, less. And so we would want to write these down and then write down one positive effect of tracking these habits for you. So reinforce the need for tracking. Now, step number three, we're going to have to TBD on, and we'll check in the future. You're welcome to check in with me, but check in the future and see how this is going for you. And ask yourself, was it helpful for me to write it down? Did I remember it more often? Journal writing, when it became a ritual for transformation, is not only life-changing, but life-expanding. So positive things. I think that one really cool thing that we can do for our journals is to write down or to collect things that are positive. Maybe somebody gives you a paper flower made of a napkin at lunch, and you decide to tape it into your journal and flatten it, smash it flat. Every time you go back through that journal, that is a form of integration. And so when you write things down that are positive, we have the moment of experiencing the positivity that we feel from that statement. We have the positive moment of reading it and like reinforcing this, because as you're writing it down, you're slowing things down. So we're slowing down the positivity. And then it also gives us an opportunity to look back. And when you're going through your journal, maybe you're looking for that contact information from that business card from last week. and you see this quote and you need to hear it again. So again, this is more of that message in a bottle experience. And I do love this quote by Jeffrey Anderson. The question is not whether or not to change and whether or not change and challenges are going to happen. They are. The question is, when do they happen, and how are we going to choose to look at them, contextualize them, and navigate them? Gratitude. I would love to encourage everyone to develop some sort of a gratitude practice. Um, Gratitude has been shown by science to give us so much more beneficial chemicals. It's been shown to improve connection with others and expectancy. And so here in this journal, you'll see where they have given me a place to write in gratitudes. But you can also do these little drawings for yourself. But this is a great place to kind of step back and say, what is good? And I don't fill this out all at once. When it fills up, I make a new page that maybe looks completely different with new gratitude. You can also see that I use my journal to put some Spanish in as well. So, gratitude page. If you have space on your page, on a new page, write the word gratitude in large print at the top, bottom, middle, or wherever. With a different color pen, draw a few squiggles or create a border. Now, draw a few words about people, places, or things that you are grateful for today. So maybe the call to action here is just to write down one or two statements about things that you can be grateful for in this moment, no matter how small or big. Then you'd want to visit this page again, and maybe you come back to this to look at your notes next week when you're looking at your goals. Maybe you add a few more things of gratitude. So there's an invitation here to practice returning and adjusting your journal as well. Like nothing is set in stone, nothing has to stay the same. And the invitation here for gratitude is if you can't find anything to be grateful for, I think this is a really important indication to reach out to someone who can help you find gratitude. Because I think when we can't find even small things, it is definitely a sign that we need support from others. Integration skills. So these are some skills that I think help with processing integration, psychedelic experiences, difficult experiences, happy experiences, but definitely psychedelic experience skills. Um, I love this pro con list. How many people know what a pro con list is? Yeah. Has anybody heard of the pros and cons of not doing something? This is probably my favorite. I do this with clients all the time, and I do it with myself as well. So, this is a special kind of pro con list where we have four boxes instead of three. The first part is the pro and con of doing the thing. This is a traditional pro con list. The second part of the pro con list is the pro of not doing the thing and the con of not doing the thing. So this is a pro con list for moving out next month. And we have pros of moving out. I save money, ready to leave, travel gig. The cons, having to live in the car, finding a place to sleep. It's a pain in the butt to be a nomad. Um, and then when we look at the pros and cons of not doing it, um, great. I'm not moving. I don't have to move my stuff. I don't have to pack. I get to be comfortable. Those are great pros of not moving out. What's a con of not moving out? Well, I'm broke. I have no money, right? Moving out gives me money. Um, and then no mo money for food or social events. Now, I wasn't that close to not eating. I'm a dietitian. I just have a high standard. So just to be clear about that. But pro con lists with a twist integration skills, podcasts, classes. So just writing down skills that you're learning. Here is a Nest class where I'm learning about their sustainable trauma-informed compassionate care or STIC. And I just took a few notes on the class and have them in my journal as well. So here's another way of doing the practice. Um, So you would write down the name of this class. Okay, so we can do the same kind of entry. Um, and think about the contents of this class. What's one insight from taking this class? Two people you can share this insight with, and three opportunities to apply it to your life. Now, you might have to wait to do this later, but reviewing this later when you have three opportunities to, or two people to share it with, will help to reinforce whatever it is about this. It's the biggest hack that I can give you and what got me through university when I'm not a profoundly good student in any stretch of the imagination. I'm a straight C student, is that I taught my classmates. Every time I learned something, I taught my classmates. Study groups, I would say, this is what I learned in class. Somebody else would tell me what they learned in class. And then when the third person finally showed up late, I would tell them what I said and what the second person said. And that's how I learned, was by repeating things to other people. To me, reading through old letters and journals is like a treasure hunt. Somewhere in those faded, handwritten lines, there's a story that has been packed away in a dusty box for years. So we're kind of almost to the end of our talk. So let's go through our tips. Number one tip for journaling is to take your journal with you. Carry it, take it places, put down your phone. And when you put down your phone, pick up your journal, say, I'm going to leave my phone in the car for this doctor's appointment, and I'm going to scribble in my journal for the 5 minutes that I have before my appointment. In doing so, I'm going to encourage you to put your contact information in the front of your journal clearly. This has gotten me back my journal in the past, so it definitely increases your or decreases your stress for somebody finding it and then making sure to give it back. Journals with pockets. If you get the higher end bullet journals, they will have pockets. You can also create a pocket. You can tape a pocket to the back of your journal. There's no rule. Remember, you can destroy this thing. Hopefully, when you put it up on a shelf, it looks thoroughly worn as if it has traveled around the world. And so a pocket is really great because you can put things in it. The strap keeps everything closed, and then you can go through and you can tape things in or glue things in later. Staying organized. A table of contents is something that I have done in the past. I don't always keep one, but if the chaoticness of this journal style bothers you, then you can just keep a log of where things are so that you can say, oh, this is where my ideas are, or this is a journal entry. It doesn't have to be super specific. You can see here where I have the workbook or memes, like meme ideas that I wrote down. So I can go through this journal and just flip to those pages and I can make a bunch of memes about psychedelics. If you all aren't on our social media, I really do encourage it. We do try and post memes that we have created ourselves in the psychedelic space. And I think we're funny and cheeky. Um, and then use the supplies you already have, especially if you're worried about this not working out. I think that there's something really creative to not have all colored pencils or to have everything there. You can see in this picture, I have one of every color, and it is enough, right? And so maybe you only have two pens, and maybe that's just your red and blue phase. of your life. Painters have phases that they name all kinds of things after, and this will just create a certain texture to your journal just by based on what is available in your environment. Um, we talked about using glue sticks. Other things that I do is sometimes I cut up stickers, especially if it's not a sticker that I like. If somebody gave me a sticker from a festival that's all advertising, I end up just cutting it up to be the stickers to like stick in business cards or whatever it is that I have. So being creative and not needing the right thing, I think that it's a parallelism is that journaling in this way becomes a parallelism for the work that you're trying to do internally or can. If haunted by an emotional upheaval in your life, try writing about it or sharing the experience with others. However, if you catch yourself telling the exact same story over and over in order to get past your distress, rethink your strategy. Try writing or talking about your trauma in a completely different way. Again, Dr. Penbaker. So, thank you for coming today. If you're ready to go deeper, join us for our online integration circles that we have at least monthly, or come and do one-on-one coaching. I'd love to see your journaling. I'd love to maybe even spend some time being a body double while you do that kind of journaling. Maybe you need somebody to sit by you while you work on your work as well. One of the most profound things that I do for some of my clients is give them a moment to do the processing, to write, put the alarm in your phone, whatever the thing is that you want to do. We can do that together. And so, you can go to see us at alteredstatesintegration.com, which is where hopefully you found out about this class. And thank you so much all for coming and listening and participating in your own health and growth experience. So